my stepmom and I got into a fight, like an arguing thing, and I just told her, like, I've had enough. I'm going to school. I'm telling them everything. And I was walking down the hall from my room towards, like, the kitchen area, and she was in the kitchen, and I was going to the front door, and she grabs some kind of a knife, and she chases me down, and she cuts my head open with a knife, and I'm just, like, right in the middle of the rotunda, and blood's going everywhere, right, because it's your head, so you have a lot of blood. All right. Welcome back to the Rain Brings Growth podcast. We have switched seats. I'm in the hot seat now, and Carrie's going to be interviewing me. You guys get to hear my whole life story, so buckle in. It's a big one.
Oh, no.
Just kidding. It's a good one.
Yeah, it's a good one. I just want to say before we get started that I'm very proud of you, that you're being very brave telling your story. And I know when we discussed it, last week, it really choked you up. And for you to sit in the hot seat and tell your story, I just commend you for that. So I know that you haven't told very many people about your story, just bits and pieces. So, and I don't even know it. So I know bits and pieces and that's it. So it'd be interesting to hear what happened and how you've been healing from that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I can't expect someone to come on here and tell their story if I won't tell mine, right? So.
Right. That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Well, let's get started.
All right, cool.
All right. So describe the circumstances around your parents' divorce. And it was at a young age, correct?
Yeah, so I'm from Utah, and my parents divorced when I was 2. And then, I don't know, I think they just grew apart, and I don't know why they got divorced exactly. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, I was 2 years old when my parents divorced, so I don't really remember my parents being together. I feel like sometimes I have some memories of, like, their old house, and I've described it to them, and like, yeah, that was from when you were, like, a baby. So I was like, oh, yeah, the stairs were right here, and they're like, yeah, those are home in Riverton, so... Yeah, I'd have, like, odd memories of that. The childhood memories that I have of my mom and dad, they just fought a lot. Mm-hmm. Especially during, like, the custody area.
Yeah.
You know, I think a lot of parents, they, like, try and get you to like them more than the other, or it can be nasty. And yeah, it was just... I guess they divorced when I was 2, and then from there, I don't know. Yeah. I just lived with my mom, and then my dad went after custody for me. I think that went on for a couple years.
So how old were you when you went to live with your dad?
I went to kindergarten at my mom's house, and then I started in first grade at my dad's house, so somewhere around 5 or 6.
Okay.
I think yeah.
And how was that transition for you?
It was rough. I mean, it was the, like, weekend or every other weekends I would go and see my mom, or on the other side I would see my dad every other weekend before that. And then a lot of the fighting back and forth between the two of them, they didn't get along. And yeah, it was weird. Like, looking back, I remember a lot of fighting between them. So but yeah, I think it was like fifth grade, I went to live with my dad. I started in first grade, and then I seen my mom a little bit more around that. But yeah, it was just like the every other weekend kind of deal, like the typical arrangements. Yeah. I think maybe once a week.
And did they live close?
Yeah, they were like 10 minutes apart. Okay. So they were within the area.
Yeah. So when you went to go live with your dad, was he already remarried?
He remarried, I believe, when I was in kindergarten or first grade. One of the two, yeah.
So your stepmom was there when with that transition?
Yeah, she was my dad's second wife was my daycare lady. That's how my dad met her. I went to her daycare.
Okay.
And then, yeah, she ended up marrying, or they got married.
Yeah. And how did your relationship evolve with her, your stepmom?
It started out, I think, just fine. I mean, it was like... you know, I guess it was typical. Mm-hmm. Started out all right, just from going to the, I guess, honeymoon stage of having a new person in your life. It was all right off the rip, you
Yeah.
know, nothing crazy.
Okay.
Um, I know I can't remember too much from like first grade area, but
Hmm.
um, yeah, no, it was all right starting off, and then I went to first grade, and then kind of going back and forth between. It was weird having like a stepmom and then my real mom, and like at that young of an age, it's kind of a
Right.
weird spot to be in.
Yeah. It's kind of confusing sometimes for kids
Yeah,
to have both.
yeah, divorced parents sucks.
Yeah.
Like the whole two Christmases thing, like keep it.
Yeah, yeah. You might get extra gifts, but it's still not fun being torn between two people.
Yeah.
Yep.
They both like badmouth back and forth, right? Like
Yeah.
trying to get like me to like one more than the other, and
So they didn't keep it civil around.
no, it was pretty nasty.
Yeah. And was it just you, or did you have siblings around the same time?
I have a brother and sister on my mom's side, and I'm an only child. I was an only child on my dad's side.
Okay. So it was just you living. It was just you and your.
It was just me, my dad, and my stepmom at my
Stepmom.
dad's house.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So when do you feel like her behavior started to change towards you?
Yeah, so it was like probably in, I'd say second grade, things started to go south with my stepmom and I. It was like some kind of a controlling thing. She was a really big master manipulator,
Okay.
and from early on she started to turn me against my dad, and would like tell me things like that he was being mean to her or something, and then would say like you need to not talk to him, like, cuz or just be quiet when he's around or something. It would start off like that, and she's like, you need to just be quiet. And then I was a kid, so I mean, like, I can't really be quiet.
Right.
And then it came to the point where I would start getting like spankings from her. It started out just small, like spankings, like I told you to be quiet and you're whatever, right? So she would start just doing little things like that, or go to your room, or like I would get punished because I was being a kid or just talking too
Right.
much, or I guess I was a rambunctious kid. And I don't know, I think that's just normal
Yeah.
young 6-year-olds or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it started changing in like second grade. I think first grade was pretty chill. Second grade is definitely towards the end of second grade is when things started to really go down south with
Mhm.
her, and then just escalated a lot.
Yeah. So why do you think, like, what was there something that changed in the household, or?
Well, she was 20 years older than my dad too. So all
Oh,
of her
wow.
kids, she has 4 kids, and they were all grown and out of the house. So
Oh, yeah.
now there's this 6-year-old kid, and she's
She's-
done with kids. So I
Yeah.
don't think she wanted me around. Like I don't know, I think she was maybe 40, 50, yeah, like 52 maybe. I don't
Wow.
know.
Yeah.
My dad was like 32. So yeah, she was like in her 50s already. So kids all out of the house. And I think she just didn't want, I mean, she plain out told me later in life, like she didn't want me around.
Yeah.
Yeah, she just didn't want kids around and
Yeah.
didn't like me.
Yeah. So it started off, things were fine, and then started escalating over time.
Yeah, she used to tell me that I was like a brat, and that like just little things like I would only want my dad to put a straw in my drink, or like different things, like I really preferred my dad. And I think it bugged her that I was just being a brat and didn't want her to help me at all or anything. Like I was maybe rejecting her off the bat, and so maybe she didn't like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So how did it escalate over time?
So like at the end of second grade, I remember she started out with like telling me to be quiet, and then I'd get punished. And this was always behind my dad never knew anything about it. He worked a lot of hours. He was like always trying to support us, and he would leave early morning, go on sales calls, and then sometimes he would be out till like 10 o'clock at night, and we just didn't see him.
Right.
And so we had a lot of time together. And so then it got to the point where like she would be like, if you don't listen to me, you're going to be in your room the whole time, or different things that just started escalating. And then she got to the point where she's like, she would tell me things like, your dad is a bad person and you shouldn't be nice to him, and you need to be mean to him because these things that he's doing to me. Do you think that's okay? Like what he's doing to me? And I'm like, no, like that's not okay. She's like, yeah, you should probably treat him bad then, because he's doing that to me. If you don't think that's all right, then you should treat him bad because it's not okay what he's doing. And then I'd be like, well, okay, what am I supposed to do? And then that's when it started about like, just don't talk when he's around or give really short answers. And I'm like, I don't really want to do that. She's like, well, if you don't, like, you're going to be grounded to your room, because if you aren't going to respect me, then you're just going to go to your room, or you're going to get spanks or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And then, so that's how it like started. And then it just progressively got worse. And then she would start telling me things like, you need to tell your dad that you hate him. Or, and like for like a little kid, like to tell your dad, like, that you hate him. And then, so I started having all these, like acting bad towards my dad. And then my dad and I's relationship obviously started getting bad. She would maybe tell him like the worst things that you would tell like your dad, like, I don't want to have your last name anymore. And like, I want to change my last name. And like, just, I hate you. And, like we would literally get into fights. Like I would have to like hit my dad, and she would make me do all this stuff. And then it started escalating to the point where if you don't do this, you're not going to eat. And then the beatings got from like spankings to like literally beatings and like yelling and all these things. And so I got all these things that I'm doing to my dad, and then it starts evolving to, she wanted me to like call her mom from an early age, and I didn't really want to do that. And then she made me start not having a relationship with my mom, and she started brainwashing me that my mom didn't want me and like all these other things. And so then I had to start telling my dad, like, I don't want to go to my mom's house on the weekends, that I'm supposed to go over there. So I'm always at home. And then my relationship deteriorated with my mom, so I never went over to see her. And she, I'm sure, was devastated and tried to get me. And then my stepmom would keep telling me, like, the only reason your mom wants to hang out with you is so she could try and get custody, so she doesn't have to pay your dad child support. And just like brainwashed me back and forth, and like, oh, she doesn't want you. You're her least favorite kid. Just like the worst things you can tell a young kid.
Yeah.
And then it kept going up to like the beatings were getting more often. I wasn't allowed to go outside and have friends. Since after like the second grade, I never had friends. I wasn't able to go outside. We had a 40-foot in-ground pool in our backyard, and we would have pool parties all the time. She would tell me, like, you have to stay inside. You can't come outside. And like my window was right outside the pool, so middle of summer, like I'm just hearing all these kids having fun and everything. And then, yeah, like the not eating thing, she stopped letting me eat. And there was a lot of times where my dad would leave town to go on like business trips or fishing things. And there was times where she would be like, you're not eating today.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And that was like all starting like second, third grade. Like it got really bad. My dad was paying a bunch of money to have these child therapists come to the house and like try and figure out what's going on with me. Yeah. And I started getting on like depression pills and Zoloft and Wellbutrin, all these different things. And
so he didn't connect.
Yeah, no clue that she was telling me what to do, any of this.
Right.
And she also started making me tell lies, like blatant lies, and accusing different people of different things, and like against family members, against friends, everybody. Mm-hmm. And obviously they were lies, and my dad knew they were lies. So my credibility went out the window.
Right.
So like I said, she was a master manipulator, just telling me what to do. And I couldn't do anything because at this age, like I said, I couldn't eat. I couldn't go outside. I had no friends. No family wanted to be around me.
Yeah.
And she blatantly made me know that this is this is your life. You can either accept it or run away. Like she would always tell me like running away is an option, you know? I'm like third grade, not knowing what to do. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So
yeah, it
your
was rough.
dad saw that something was going on, but he just thought
He thought I was just a
was
troubled
you.
kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're in a divorced household and you're just troubled, and here's some therapists
And I was just, and that I was a master manipulator, and I was just trying to get my way, and I was trying to play the sides of both sides against my mom versus my dad, or try and. I think it's where a lot of it started. Yeah.
yeah. And all this time, your stepmom was the one that was putting that wedge between you and your dad.
Yeah. Yep. It was 100% the whole time, and started real early.
Yeah. So, what are some strategies that you use to like cope with that, the fear and the manipulation and everything that she was putting you through?
I just went to my room, and I wasn't allowed to watch TV or play any games. And then that was another thing. Like I had all this nice stuff in my room, and she would tell me, go to your room, but don't play on anything. Don't do anything. Just sit in your room. The only thing that I had was like a small little radio that I just listened to a lot of music. Like I leave it really low so that if I heard her coming, like I could turn it off but I think music was just like my big escape.
Yeah. So what would happen if she caught you, like if you were playing a game or?
I just get beat. Yeah. She would just spank me or with a belt, sometimes closed fist, like even early on. Later on, it was always closed fist and hit me and where whatever object was close. Yes. But
so it wasn't a typical like swat in the butt, get your attention kind of thing.
Oh, no, it was like a full on like aggression, rage, taking it out. And she, from a young age, she told me that she was like literally a witch and would, middle of the night, I'd be sleeping and she'd come and start like whispering some gibberish stuff and like doing the whole witch thing.
Yeah.
And would like make me think at that age, like I'm pretty impressionable. So I'm thinking that like some voodoo shit's going on, right?
Yeah.
And there was a lot of times where she would just wake me up in the middle of the night. Either sometimes she would beat me in the middle of the night, or sometimes she'd tell me like before I go to bed, like don't sleep. Like just psychological warfare the whole time.
Wow. Yeah. What about at school? Like did teachers or anybody notice like were you troubled at school, or how was your grades, or how were you at school?
In third grade, she told me to go tell my teacher that before I went to school, she's like, go to school early and tell your teacher that your dad's beating you. So now the school starts this whole thing, and we have like police come to our house in like third grade, and they do like an investigation where obviously they don't find that anything. But now the school doesn't believe anything, and like I've built this reputation through a couple different things that now they don't believe me. So I remember that started in third grade, and then.
So you didn't really have a safe place because school thought you were a troubled child, and then at home, you know, your dad thought you were troubled, and then you have the stepmom who's being abusive to you, and nobody even knows but you.
Right.
Yeah. So what was, tell me a little bit about the incident with the knife.
Yeah, so it was in third grade, and I remember one morning before I was going to school, my stepmom and I got into a fight, like an arguing thing, and I just told her like I've had enough. I'm going to school. I'm telling them everything, and I was walking down the hall from my room towards like the kitchen area, and she was in the kitchen, and I was going to the front door, and she grabs some kind of a knife and she chases me down and she cuts my head open with a knife. And I'm just like right in the middle of the rotunda, and blood's going everywhere, right? Because it's your head, so you have a lot of blood. And she starts freaking out, like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Like, I promise, you'll have a normal life. Like, you could be happy. You can have friends. Like all this. Just don't tell anybody." Oh. And like I'm just like bleeding on the floor, and I'm just wanting to like. At that point, all I wanted was change. Like I didn't really care. I was just like, whatever, sure, I'll go along with it. And she's like, I was like, yeah, I just want things to change. You promise things are going to change. She's like, yeah, I promise everything's going to change. Like, just please don't tell them. And so I remember she went and tossed the knife under the kitchen sink. She walks me over to my room, and then we smear all the blood from my head on my my bed frame. And then I had to tell the paramedics that I had a tantrum, and I hit my head on the bed. And I remember the paramedics were like very skeptical because I'm sure they've seen the difference between cuts and gashes.
Right.
And they were asking me like, "Are you sure? Are you sure?" Like, and I was like, "Yeah, I just got mad and I hit my head." And they're like, "Is that really what happened?" Like, just totally not believing it. And then I was like, "Yeah." They loaded me up, took me to the hospital, and that was it. And then 2 weeks later, everything was back to hell again.
So nothing changed.
Mm-mm.
She promised, said all this stuff.
It was fine for like 2 weeks, and then back to hell.
Yeah. So after that, did you try to speak up, or did you ever try to speak out or tell somebody, or?
I didn't then because I still had that bad reputation as a liar, and I knew nobody believed me.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think she always kept telling me too, like, that she reminded me, no one's gonna believe you. You're a liar. If you ever try and tell on me, like, I will make sure that. Pretty much, she would threaten me with my life a lot of the times, or to send me off to homes. I did go spend nights in different homes growing up. Like, I went to spend a whole week in Primary Children's Hospital, like behavioral unit, like pretty much, I guess it was like a psych ward for kids. I was there for a whole week. They're doing all these tests on me and everything, and whatever. I don't know whatever came out of that. Obviously nothing. So it was just a nice retreat for me.
Yeah. So what happened to, like, was it your dad that sent you there? Was it her? Like, how did that escalate? How did that?
I'm pretty sure it was probably my dad, like, just trying to find whatever he could to help me out.
Mm-hmm.
I know that my dad told me, like, we're spending hundreds of thousands. I don't know if it's hundreds, but he said at least $100,000. This was later on, so probably over like 6 years. Like, he said that they spent like $100,000 trying to figure out what's wrong.
Wow.
Between like sending me off to different places or all the therapists that I had to go to. I'm like, and obviously I can't tell anything to the therapist, right? So I talked hours and hours with these therapists, and like, what's wrong? I'm like, nothing. What am I going to tell you? Like, you know,
you can't open up. You can't tell them the truth because you're just going to get punished even further.
Yep. Yeah. So that went on for a minute, like honestly, day in and day out for years. And I remember there was even times where she would leave to go up here to Idaho. She had kids that lived up here, and they would have kids. So she wanted to go see her newborn grandkids. She would spend like a week, and she'd tell me, like, while I'm gone, you make your dad's life a living hell. And if you don't, there's going to be hell to pay when you get back. Because it was usually during the summertime, so I was home all the time. And that was the other thing, is that, like, I actually liked going to school because that was my only break. So summer times and weekends, I hated.
Yeah.
Because I'm home
24/7 with her.
Yeah. And then, so she would leave during the summertime, sometimes for like a week, or go see her kids in Idaho, and she'd tell me, like, yeah, you better make sure that your dad's life is a living hell. I remember she would call and be like checking in, like, oh, how's Matt doing? And I would just be like, tell her I'm being bad. And he's like, that's right, he's doing all right. We're fine. She's like, oh, you guys having a good time? And he's like, yeah, we're having a good time. And I was like,
oh no.
Yeah, so I always like was telling my dad, like, tell her we're having a bad time, or tell her I'm being bad. And he's like, I mean, my dad and I weren't really always having a bad time. We actually had pretty decent times for the conditions that we were in, like, while she was gone.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, but I tried telling him, like, hey, tell her I'm being bad or whatever. Yeah. And I played sports too during this time. Mm-hmm. My dad made sure that I was playing sports. He's like, had me in baseball and football, Little League football. And she would tell me, like, you better just sit down when you go to practices. Don't even play. If you play, you're going to have hell to pay when you get home. So I would always, like, just not do anything really at practices, and then I would get in trouble. And my dad was a lot of times the coaches too. Oh, wow. So then she was like, make sure you make a scene or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. And so a lot of times I'd coach his kid, right, being a jerk and talking back to the coach and all these things. And then, yeah, during football, I'd have to just sit out. And then it was weird, though, because, like, on game day, she'd be like, all right, give it your all. And then I would play, like, I had so much aggression, I would just play. But I was so underweight from not eating that I always had to play one age division down, or I was a light enough weight that I could play one division down.
Right.
So I'm always playing, like, I'm in third grade, I'm playing with second graders or whatever, right? And then I would just do really good on, like, the game days. And my dad was always like, man, this guy doesn't practice, but come game day, he's a great athlete, right?
Yeah.
And, like, that was, like, my dad's favorite story to tell. Like, yeah, he hated practice, but, man, come game day, this guy could play.
He was ready.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but even then, sports was just not something I looked forward to because I knew that there was something on the other side that I was going to have to do or make a scene, or, like, it was just, there was no retreat anywhere. The only time that I could ever get some kind of retreat is when my dad and my stepmom would go out for dinner or something, and she would send me to her kid's house. And she would be like, you better be on your best behavior for my kids. So then I would have, like, I'd be a normal kid at their house. I would eat. I would, like, do kids things, even though the kids that I'm hanging out with are, like, you know, like 10 years younger than me. I'm just like, whatever. At least I'm a kid.
Yeah.
So
it seemed normal when you went over.
Yeah. I never talked anything bad about her kids because they were always good to me. So, like, throw that out there for what it is.
Yeah. So when you talk about, you know, having to disrupt your dad's enjoyment of activities and events and watching football and how you had to make his life a living hell, what are some of the things that you would do to do that?
I know there was a particular time that my dad had finished the basement, and that's where I lived a lot of my time that we lived in Utah. And he put, like, a big theater down there, and I remember he was watching the Tostitos Fiesta Bowl, and it was University of Utah playing. And I was just, like, being rude to him and pretty much yelling at him while he was downstairs trying to watch TV, and that's kind of, it was his time, and we got into a big fight. He ended up calling the cops on me as, like, a disturbing the peace kind of a call or something. It wasn't the first time that the cops had come to our house for that kind of thing, trying to calm the peace. And I think it was more like a scare tactic for me, but it didn't really work because I wasn't the one controlling these shots.
Right.
So that time they ended up coming. They all come downstairs, like 3 cops. One of them was the SRO for the elementary school I went to. I think his name was Winkleman. And I was just sick of it. I was like, you know what? I told the cops, I was like, my stepmom's abusing me, and I am not allowed to eat. I'm getting no respect around here. Like, everything's terrible. I can't live here anymore. And I just pretty much laid it all out on the line for him. And then I hear my dad and my stepmom in the other room, and they're like, no, that's not the truth. He's a habitual liar. Oh. And they're like, they already knew kind of too, because they knew me.
Yeah.
And so they, like, just played it off like nothing. And then that just fueled my stepmom's fire after that. The next day I remember her saying, like, you'll never catch me. I'll never get caught. Like, you tried. How to get you, you know? Yeah. And I just lost a lot of hope. And then around that same time too, like, she started planting different things in my room, and it started out with, like, her jewelry or pills that she had and different things like that. And I'm in 6th grade. She's trying to make it look like I'm trying to experiment with drugs, and then taking her pills and then taking her jewelry to, I don't know, try and make it look like that's what I'm using to buy the stuff. And then these random room searches started happening all the time. And my dad would be like, we're going to do a room search. Is there anything you want to tell us about? And I'm like, nothing that I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he'd start looking, and lo and behold, he'd find like a pill bottle or just whatever in there. And he's like, "Where'd this come from? Like, what are you doing?" And I'm like, "I have no clue. Like this, I don't even know what that is." And he's like, "Don't play dumb with me. This is your room. Nobody else lives here besides you." Like, and
Yeah.
I'm like,
How did that affect your relationship with him?
there's just no trust, right? So I had no trust with anybody. They all just wrote me off as like the bad kid that lies, tries to get attention, and
Yeah.
just terrible relationship. I didn't have a relationship with really anybody.
Mm-hmm. And what did that do to your self-esteem and your self-worth?
I was just really non-existent. I was just really going through life without doing anything, just going through the motions, just not really having any aspirations, nothing to look forward to. Spring break, winter break, vacations, nothing. A lot of times anything I'd get for Christmas or birthday presents ended up broken or lost. So I didn't have nothing to look forward to, so.
Talking about Christmases, talk a little bit about how Christmas was at your house.
It was a weird time. My stepmom loved Christmas, so usually Christmas would be a day full of like opening all these nice gifts, and she would shut it off for like a day.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, like earlier in life, it was like, you could play with your stuff today, but just know you're not gonna play with it ever again, and stuff like that. So I would, enjoy opening Christmas morning, and like I felt like it was gonna be cool, and then I knew it'd be short lived. I remember, what was it, like 8th grade? I think, yeah, it was like 8th grade when we moved to Idaho between 7th and 8th grade year because my dad just thought that I had such a bad reputation with everybody in Utah, and I was just hanging around the wrong people, and that's why I was acting the way I was. He had an opportunity to open up another location for his business, so he decided we're going to go to Idaho. And that was beginning of 8th grade. I started in Idaho, and all my problems followed me there, right? So
Yeah. So you were hoping that change of environment would
that's what he
bring
was hoping
change,
for, right? Yeah.
Yeah. But it didn't change
Complete
anything.
different, new group of kids to hang around with, new everything.
Yeah.
So everything just followed, and all the contraband in my room, the room searches, everything just got worse. I think I had started talking to my mom a little bit more recently since I moved to Idaho. So I remember that Christmas when we moved to Idaho, he had sent me down to Utah so that I could see her for the week or for the Christmas. And I remember coming back, it was like December 28th or something after Christmas, and got back pretty late. And he was like, he told me, when you get back, we'll do Christmas. My stepmom picks me up from the airport, and on the ride back, she's like, "You're not opening any of your presents this year." I was like, "Well, how's that going to work? We're doing Christmas when we get home." She's like, "Tell your dad you don't want to do it. You're not going to open up presents. Just figure it out." So I told him when we get home, I was like, "I'm just tired. Like, let's do it later." And then the next day, he's like, "All right, let's do Christmas." And I was like, "Nah, I don't think I'm going to open them today." And that went on and on. And I knew that, like, back in November around Black Friday, we were at Walmart, and he had purchased 4 PlayStation 3s, like brand new, right as they came out. And he had already made a call to like 3 other people, and I knew that 4th one he was getting for me. And he had got like, so I knew, you're a kid, the shape of stuff when it's wrapped, and it's all under there. Obviously, I know it's right there. And it goes on. Another week goes by. I haven't opened up anything. He's getting all frustrated. He's like, "Are you gonna like we gotta do Christmas?" They opened up their stuff, and all my stuff is still sitting in my closet because they had moved all the Christmas stuff, packed it up. Like, I have all of these presents just chilling in my closet, and I can't touch them. And I think it was probably about mid-January, and he's like, you know what? You're ungrateful. Opened them all in front of me and said, I'm taking them back to Walmart or wherever he got them. And I didn't get nothing, none of it. And it was just a lonely Christmas.
Yeah. And how did that impact your view of family and trust and
the whole family dynamic? Like, I just didn't believe in nothing. I didn't believe in really anything. I had grown up in the Mormon church, lost faith, like the whole God's plan, like he's got a plan for you and everything. I was like, there's no way that there is a God, because why would he put me through all of this? This is not, there's no plan for me. Lost faith, didn't have any family, no friends, and just had a psycho stepmom that would literally, her favorite things to do were to watch TV, like crime shows, and she would literally tell me, like, I know how I could get away with stuff. Like, she would watch murder shows, and she's like, just literally telling me, like, she's studying. Like, she's like, I know how I could get rid of you. Like, and all these psychological things the whole time. It was just hell. I just didn't have any hope.
Yeah.
I didn't know what was going on. Yeah, like 8th grade, she started planting worse things in my room. It went to like cigarettes and like bags of white powder. I don't even know what they were. Obviously, she's trying to make it look like I'm doing cocaine or something. All these different things keep popping up in my room, these room searches. Obviously, every time, I don't know where it is. A couple times she did tell me, like, while my dad's searching the whole room, she would, like, eye to my top drawer or something, and then I would just go and get what it was. And she'd be, after she would say, like, come on, Matt, just tell us where it's at. Oh. And then I'd go get it, right? Because she just told me where it's at. And then, so there's no trust between my dad and I. There's no trust in any of my family. They all thought I was a liar, everything. I just didn't have any hope to tell anybody. I just figured that nobody would even believe me because it's happened before.
Right.
But yeah, and then I remember one time my dad found cigarettes on me. Not on me, but in my room. And he's like, you like cigarettes so much? And then he just made me eat a cigarette.
Oh, gosh.
I was like, I wish you would have found marijuana or something. Or like, I wish I would have been doing actual drugs during that whole time. Like that, maybe it would have given me something, but I didn't do nothing. I'd never smoked, so everything that she would find on me, I had no clue. Maybe, and there was like half burnt stuff, like literally probably picked them out of an ashtray. Sometimes it was like a half a carton or whatever they pack. I don't know. She was psycho, but got away with it, and nobody ever knew. And that was all the way. I was in 8th grade. 9th grade, I remember, again, they found cigarettes on me, and that time they called the cops. My dad was, like, fed up with it.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm done. We were getting ready to go to Utah for the weekend, and he called the cops. And the cops came, and they're like, okay, well, you want us to scare him or whatever? And he's like, no, treat it like you would anybody else. Write him a ticket. So I was like 14 years old, got a minor in possession of tobacco, and then had to appear to the court. And the judge asked my dad, like, what should we do? What do you want us to do with your son? He's like, throw the book at him. Give him the worst you can. So I got like $180 ticket and then 25 hours of community service, which is actually really nice because that was 5 Sundays where I just went with Canyon County and like picked up trash on the side of the road, or went to their garden area and picked all the weeds, or picked up trash in local town in like Caldwell, or picked up all their range brass at their firing range.
Yeah.
Like it was,
so
other kids hated it and I loved it.
Yeah.
I was just like, sign me up. I always signed up for after school programs. My grades were slipping, so I always went to like tutoring classes out after school. Just made up different excuses that I could stay there as long as I could at school. I started doing that since like 6th grade. Always just staying after. My grades were shit anyway, so I had a real reason to go. But Um, yeah, I remember I would always get in trouble in school because I would be sleeping in class or not paying attention. And then they were like, oh, maybe it's just because he's on meds, or why is he sleeping all the time?
It's because you weren't sleeping.
But like I wasn't able to go to sleep at night because I would get tortured in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And I remember in ninth grade, I still there was just days where my stepmom was like, you're not eating today, right? Or you got one meal today, you can pick which meal you're gonna get. And then if it was a school day, she knew I ate at school, so she's like, well, you automatically are eating lunch, and that's it. Which was like a godsend, kind of, because I had seminary, which is like the Mormon school in high school, and that was in ninth grade. I had it on third period, which was the lunch period, and you could either go to the first lunch, and then you had class of 2 after that. They split it up 3 ways, right? But seminary doesn't track your attendance with school because it's a separation of state and religion.
Oh, yeah.
So I never went to seminary, and I always did I would eat 3 lunches. I would go to the library in between when the lunch would get over and the next one would start, so I'm not just chilling and people drawing attention to myself.
Right.
So I would eat 3 lunches a day and just stock up, and then maybe try and sneak some food home. And I would tell my dad, hey, I'm out of lunch money. I need more lunch. He's like, I just gave you lunch money last week. And I'm like, I don't know. I think maybe someone's got my PIN number or something. I don't know what to tell you. I don't have any lunch money. So he kept putting money on, which is good. He didn't just be like, well, you have to make it last. So good on him. So I would just, try and get all my calories in that I could. And
when you weren't at home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I got real good at trying to figure out where all the squeaks were in the floor, because in the middle of the night I try and get up and go and eat the things that weren't able to be counted, because she was really good at knowing how much we had of everything. So I would eat raw spaghetti noodles or marshmallows or handfuls of cereal, things you can't count.
Yeah.
So mainly, I guess, just carbs. But and then when they would do these room searches, they would find food in my room, and he's like, if you're not going to eat when we eat, you're not going to eat on your own terms. Because this whole time from probably the 3rd grade till then, we would go out to eat, and she's like, you're not eating. So I'd have to tell the waitress, I'm not hungry. And it was these nice fancy restaurants we'd even be at, and I'd just be like, no, I'm not eating, and causing a scene or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a rough time trying to figure that out up until that point.
Yeah. So then you met Ashley.
Yeah, so I met Ashley in 8th grade when we first moved up to Idaho. And I didn't really ever talk to her, but she was in my homeroom class. And I knew of her, but we didn't really talk until 9th grade. And then in 9th grade, I started talking to her a little bit. I think we had a couple classes together. I mean, it sounds weird now, but it was I would pretty much know her schedule and make sure that I could intercept her just so I could talk to her. She was the only person that I really talked to. And we had we weren't dating or nothing until about mid-year through. We did the high school dating, date for a week, and then I sent my buddy to break up with her. It was stupid, but yeah, that's when I met Ashley in the first year that I moved to Idaho. So that was 8th grade, and then 9th grade, all the stuff happened, and my dad ended up hiring a secretary for his job and ended up catching feelings for her. And before he went too far or anything, that's why he divorced my stepmom.
And when was that?
That was at the end of 9th grade. Okay. And my dad was crushed. He felt like he was tearing apart the family, and felt like it was his fault and everything, and that I was never going to forgive him, because I was also this whole time forced to take my stepmom's side on anything.
Right.
And, you know, like I said from the beginning, she was always telling me how mean my dad was to her. And so my dad didn't think I liked him, which I probably didn't. Like, going through this, my dad and I didn't have a good relationship. And so he felt like in a bad spot when he told me they were getting a divorce. And I wasn't doing too good in school, but for somehow I was able to pass with like all D's. I think I passed with all D's in my 9th grade year. So I didn't fail any classes. I think it was like 60.00. I think he pulled some strings somewhere, but I got pulled out of school like a month early because he didn't want me to have to deal with what was going to happen with the whole divorce. And he sent me down to my mom's house, sent me on for like, give me like $500. He's like, have fun during the summer, like, you know, and then they got a divorce.
So he sent you to mom's house a month early, and then that's when they were kind of going through you and your stepmom and him were going through that divorce because he didn't want to see you. He didn't want you to see that.
Yeah.
That play out.
Right.
And how was that summer?
It was really good. I started rekindling a good relationship with my mom.
Yeah.
I was able to I was just starting to get some relationships back. A lot of time lost.
Yeah.
And I was really rebellious. Actually got to be a kid for once. I think I broke my wrist that summer, like just actually being a kid.
Yeah.
I actually was able to eat. So that was the biggest thing. I hadn't had a normal summer since second grade, first grade.
Yeah. And why do you think that it was because you were feeling something about, you know, your stepmom wasn't going to be there, or, you know, what kind of feelings were you feeling about their divorce?
Oh,
the stepmom.
You know, during the time, actually, I don't know, what's that? It's like Stockholm syndrome where you like feel bad for your captor or whatever, right? Like I actually felt bad for her. Like I was upset with my dad that he was gonna divorce her, and I was in it like hook, line, and sinker. Like even though I knew what she was doing to me, like I was still such a shock. Like I couldn't believe that this was gonna change. I wouldn't say I was happy right away either. Like it was a weird spot to be in. It took me a little bit to realize that like things were gonna change.
Well, because you were so used to what was happening, like that was your norm. That was a norm for you. Like it was your normal life of this is how it is, and for that to change after all these years.
Yeah, 7 years straight, day in and day out.
Yeah,
no breaks.
Yeah. So then after summer, did you stay with your mom, or did you go back to your dad, or how did that play out?
So I told my mom that I didn't want to go back to Idaho and I wanted to live with her. He came down to get me on, we were supposed to go camping in Utah. And so he came down on like a Friday to get me. And I said, I'm not going with you. And he's like, I'll be back on Sunday and you're going with me. And I ended up fighting it. He ended up getting the police involved on that Sunday. Like, hey, I have legal custody of him.
Right.
I had my hands tied. Like I couldn't go, or I couldn't stay. My mom wanted me to stay and I wanted to stay, but legally I still had to go back. So I started my 10th grade year in Meridian. And then I still wanted to live with my mom. My mom had started the paperwork then to go after custody of me. And that February, like 7 months later, she had ended up getting custody of me. So then I went to live in Utah again for the remainder of my 10th grade year. And I actually ended up not doing too good in school in Idaho. And the way that the system works between Idaho and Utah, Idaho's on semesters and Utah's on quarters. So I ended up failing a couple classes because my average between the quarters failed me. So I ended up having to retake. It was just English class I ended up taking in my senior year. I ended up taking 2 English classes at the same time, like a sophomore English and a senior English. So but then I finished out that year, and my sophomore year I finished, and then my junior year I went in Utah, and I still had a good relationship. My dad and I's relationship was starting to actually get better. We were talking a lot more, even from long distance. He still kept in touch, and we started rebuilding this relationship. And summertime, I would go back up to my dad's house and see him. And I went to see him between the sophomore year and the junior year. And then my junior year is when I started dating Ashley long distance. We had been talking, and we had went to like the Warp Tour the year prior, and that was our first time we hung out. And then we started just talking more and more, and we ended up starting to date in 2010, and we've been together since. But then after we started dating in January of 2010, I decided that I wanted to be closer to her, and I wanted to try and be on the golf team. And so I figured my dad was a pretty good golfer. Ashley was up in Idaho. Mm-hmm. I had to break my mom's heart and tell her that I wanted to move back to Idaho. Mm-hmm. After she had like just fought really hard to get me.
Yeah.
And she was nice about it. She was hurt, mm-hmm. but she understood where I wanted to be,
and you told her why?
She didn't fight me.
And
I knew she was hurt, and that was the hard part, like hurting my mom after everything she'd done for me.
Yeah.
But I just felt like I needed to be closer to Ashley and try and play golf. Mm-hmm. So then she let me. I went back up to Idaho and finished my year at Meridian High and graduated there. And then I did make it on the varsity golf team. My dad got me in golf lessons and a whole bunch of things. And Ashley and I went to both of our homecomings at her high school, my high school, both proms, like just played it all out. And I was actually having a normal few years of high school then.
Yeah. How did your personality shift between when you were living with your stepmom until that time? Like what things changed?
I think I was a little bit more fun to be around, not rude and like I was like, always. I definitely did more things. I started to get friends, and I think Ashley was a big help, like helping me become the person that I am now.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was probably good. I was still a little bit rebellious and just didn't get that out of me. It had to come out of me for a long time. So
it still isn't out of you.
Yeah.
Still a rebel.
Yeah.
So how did your relationship with your dad change since when you went back to live with him here in Idaho?
We started doing a lot more things together, and just working on doing things together, trying to make up for some lost time. And it wasn't perfect, but it definitely was tenfold better than anything that it used to be.
Yeah.
It was a rough time though. There was a learning curve for both of us. We had to try and figure out what a regular father-son relationship was like because of all those years of not having it.
Mm-hmm. What's your relationship like now?
It's great. He's been there and been great with my kids and great grandpa and always a fun guy to be around, and we're good now.
Yeah. Does he know? Have you been able to sit down and have a conversation with him as an adult of what life was like back then?
I didn't really talk to him. I gave him kind of like snippets here and there. Mm-hmm. Probably maybe it was like 18 or 19. Mm-hmm. Like kind of just trying to somewhat tell him. But it was hard for me to talk about then. I still, up until, recently I haven't really talked about it either. But he'll probably find out more than I've ever told him off of this podcast. So it was something I didn't really want him to beat himself up over, because I know as a father, if my kids went through that, how bad I would feel. And I know it's not like anything that was really in his control, because she was such a master manipulator that
Right.
I'm not going to hold that against him. So I figure if I talk to him about it, then he's going to beat himself up. So I didn't really ever talk to him about it.
Right.
Yeah.
So how do you think all of this has shaped you into the person you are today?
Oh, there's just so much that I can look back on and understand that I went through all of it for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if I can look back and think that I went through it for a reason, then it's easier to deal with. That, like, if I didn't go through all those things, then I wouldn't have created the life where my dad would want to move to Idaho for me. And then if I would have never moved to Idaho, I would have never met my wife, and I
Right.
would never have these kids. I might have some different kids or something, or there's just so many things that wouldn't have happened if I didn't go through what I went through.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to reframe the hate that I felt for her to, like, just grateful, because I got such a gift that a lot of people won't get just by going through all those hard times and being like, if I could survive through that, then my chaos level is so much lower than somebody else's. I can go through something that would probably break someone,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll be like, well, I've done way worse than that. So
Yeah, that's pretty powerful.
yeah, it's just reframing from victim to victor.
Mm-hmm. Where's she at today? Do you know?
I do know where she lives.
You don't have to say. I'm
Yeah.
just wondering if you've had contact. I guess that's what I'm asking. Have you had contact with her since the
So
divorce or anything like that? Or
I haven't actually seen her since, well, let me back up. So I didn't talk to her since probably the 9th grade summer, and then after that I never talked to her again. And a couple years ago, or no, just last year, I had hired a mentor to try and help me out with, like, getting the right mindset that I needed for a business, and just trying to build a good foundation. In one of the very first meetings we had, he said, well, we need to work through, like, you've told me that there was some stuff that happened with you and your stepmom when you were a kid. Like, I think that might be holding you back from your success and your self-doubt and self-beliefs. I think we need to work through that. And I just refused. I was like, no, man, like, I'm good. This is, I've been pretty good at just sweeping it under the rug and not bringing it up. So I think we're good. He's like, well, that's not going to help you. And I was just pretty persistent. Like, no, man, I'm good. And that was a Friday. We met at the Kiln building in Meridian.
Mm-hmm.
And then the very next day, I had to go to a wedding for my buddy. And it's like 110 degrees outside, so they were rushing this wedding. It was a pretty quick one, which was nice. But as soon as, like, the bride starts to walk down the aisle, everybody shifts and they look backwards. And she was coming from the barn area, and right next to the barn was a parking lot. And I seen my stepmom
Oh, wow.
the very next day. And then I just started, like, shaking and, like, getting all these emotions, like, immediately rushed. Just every sad, mad, angry, like, whatever, all at once. Like, I was just, and Ashley was already holding my hand. And then she's like, what is going on? I was like, she's here. And she's like, who? And I was like, my stepmom from my childhood. And she's like, oh, really? And luckily the wedding went real quick, like under 10 minutes. And I was like, I got to go, I got to go figure this out. And she's like, yeah. So I took the keys and went to the car and called my mentor and was like, man, I started to bug you. Like, I know it's a Saturday, but I don't know what the hell to do.
Yeah.
And he's like, tell me what's up. And I was like, my stepmom from my past, she's here. And, like, do I go confront her? Do I talk to her? Do I just ignore her? Do I, what do I do? And He's like, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, that's a great question. I don't know. I kind of want to, be angry at her and mad or whatever. And he's like, well, this is that time of the cow and the buffalo. You can either run towards your problem or you can run away from it. But just remember, if you go up to her and you make a big scene, she's going to know you've been thinking about her all these years and she wins.
Yep.
So, like, he's like, it's up to you, man. Like, you can do whatever you want. I'll fully support you.
Right.
Either way, but, like, you have to make this call and just think what the future you would want you to do.
Yeah.
So I was like, shit. So then I just, our placing, I was, like, directly across from her, like, not the same table, but between the people that were sitting across from me, like, I could see her, right?
Yeah.
And I just decided, like, it's not my day. I was still kind of bitter back then, too. And, I was just like, God, it's not my day. I'm not going to make a scene. This is their wedding. And
right.
But I didn't want to let things go,
Mm-hmm.
like, without her knowing that I seen her, right?
Yeah.
So she goes up to the bride and groom and's talking to him. And I was like, I'm going to go up there, too. So then she's over there talking to, like, the groom. And I go around and I give the bride a hug. And I'm like, hey, Carly,
Yeah.
what's going on? And, right, she's just right there. Doesn't say a word to me. And then she goes back. And then I talked to him. I was like, hey, how do you know her? She's like, oh, she's my client. I do her hair. I've done it for, like, the last few years. And
What a small world.
I was like, that's crazy. And I had kind of told them, like just the snippets of my childhood, kind of. And I was like, hey, remember when I told you about my stepmom? I was like, that's her.
Wow.
And then later on, after their wedding and we had hung out, she ended up telling me, she's like, yeah, she has done my hair for years and never mentioned anything about you or that she had a stepkid or none of that. Wow. And then she never went back to her after that wedding. She never, like, just cut her off. Like, completely gone.
Wow.
Yeah. Didn't, like, tell her, like, anything about, sorry, I'm not coming back. Just, nope, gone.
She was gone.
Yeah. So I had to go through, I think at that moment, I started believing in God again.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I had believed, that a little bit here and there, but I'm not full faith.
Mm-hmm.
But I just had to look at that and, like, there is no way that that's not divine intervention. Tell me, like, this is your chance to step up. This is your level up right now.
Yep.
Like, face your past and project forward.
Yeah. And that's what you did.
Yeah. It was a rough piece, but it was needed.
Yeah. Man. So tell me a little bit about what since you've been married, you've had all these darn kids.
Yeah, 4 of them.
And tell me a little bit about your journey that you've been going through has it been a year, 2 years, 3 years?
Yeah, so I had Ashley and I, like I said, we've been together since 2010. As soon as we graduated high school, we both lived at home for a little bit, and then we moved in together, I think a year later. And pretty much ever since we moved in, we were practically married. We started sharing the same bank account, like everything.
Same toothbrush.
Not that far, but yeah. Got our first apartment together, and then just went through everything together, like all of our growth. We had our first kid when I was 22 years old, and that was actually crazy too, because on my 21st birthday, we were going to go and, we were going to go to Vegas for my 21st birthday, but Ashley had found out that she was pregnant like a week earlier, or maybe a week or two earlier. Like March 27th, she had found out. And my birthday was April 2nd, so like 5 days, I guess. And we go to work that morning on my birthday, and Ashley started bleeding. And so my dad's like, you guys need to go to the emergency room, because we worked for my dad at that point for his business. And we go to the emergency room on my 21st birthday, and they tell us that she's having a miscarriage.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Like, on my birthday, I was like, this is rude. Just kidding. But, so yeah, she devastated, right?
Yeah.
And then they're like, we can't find a heartbeat. And so we called off all of our plans to go to Vegas, because they're like, well, we need to have you come back in a couple days, go see your OB, and we'll, do whatever they need to do, figure out where to go from there.
Yeah.
So we go back in that was on a Wednesday. We go on the Friday, and the lady, she's like, well, let's go ahead and, just listen, see what we can hear, if there's anything. And she just starts going around, and she hears a heartbeat.
What the hell?
Yeah, she's like, well, I can't perform any kind of miscarriage treatments on someone's got a live baby in them. So
What?
So she's like, you're 5 weeks, 5 days. The heart just hadn't developed. You were far long enough to know that you were pregnant, but not far enough for there to be a heartbeat.
Oh, wow.
So Ashley had full faith that she was still pregnant. So when we went out drinking, she still was like, you can go out. It's your 21st birthday. Let's go out. She didn't drink anything that night, 'cause she's like, I still think I'm pregnant. And like, that's crazy that she would still think that, even though a doctor, you fully trust a doctor, right?
Right.
And yep, that November we had our first baby though. So
Jeez, I've never heard of that. I've
Yeah.
never heard of that happening.
yeah, so it's a crazy, like, people are like, how's your 21st birthday? I was like, lots of ups and downs.
Yeah.
And 14 months after that, we had our second baby. So we were back to back. We've just gone through a lot together, and I think it's been really sweet to have a rock like that in my life to be able to grow with.
Yeah.
Huge. Like, we've gone through so much together. It's I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't have a typical, scene of always hitting the clubs and all this other stuff in my early 20s. Like,
Yep.
Ashley and I were just chilling, watching Netflix, and like living it up with each other, and growing and raising a family in early 20s, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
So
Yep. It's definitely a different.
yeah,
It's definitely a different scene. You're not doing the same things as other people your age. You're not going out. You're not partying. You're not, going to college. You're not, doing everything that everybody else is doing. But I think it brings you together. And, I say my husband's my best friend. I can tell him anything. And I mean, we're inseparable. When somebody invites him somewhere, I'm going with them.
right.
Not because I have to, and not because it's like a controlling thing, but it's just like everybody knows, well, if you invite him, she's coming. If you invite her, he's coming, kind of
Package
thing.
package deal.
Yeah, we're a package deal. And not because we have to be, just we
Yeah.
want to be, and I always say, no, it's a guy thing. You go do it. But,
Yeah.
Deep down, he's like, no, I want you there. And I'm like, okay. And I'm the only girl there,
Yeah.
So, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's nice to have that person that you can rely on.
Yeah, she's been everything I've been able to tell her more than anybody else for my childhood, and even till recently, though, there was a lot of stuff I didn't tell her.
Yeah.
And it frustrated her too. She's like, why don't you just talk to me? I was like, you would understand. And she's like, they'll just try. And I was like, no. Like, there's no way that you'll understand. Like, I've never heard of anybody having a similar story. I mean, there's definitely abuse, right?
Yeah.
But, like, the level of manipulation and abuse behind closed doors that nobody understands. Like, I've never heard of this particular. But I think one thing that helped me going through that was I just did see a lot of other kids that had it way worse than me. So I just always kept telling myself growing up, like, this could be worse. This could be worse. Could be worse, right? So I just kept playing it off a little bit. But yeah, that's why I look back and know that if I didn't go through all that, I'd never come to Idaho. All of my dad's family lives in Utah. All my family lives in Utah. There's nothing that would have brought us to Idaho. So grateful over hateful. That's just been how I've been able to cope with not cope with it, but like
Push through
change
it.
that mindset of I went through that for a reason. And honestly, a crazy gift for my dad to give me, but one of the best gifts that anybody could get is going through all that stuff, because I know how to be a better dad now. I know how to be somewhat of a good husband. I don't know. I could take a lot of the failures that I've gone through or seen, and I could just do the opposite of them.
Right.
All right. I mean, some of the punishments I did as a kid, I'll never make my kids do. I mean, I probably have wrote over 100,000 sentences. That was like my big punishment my stepmom always gave me, was writing sentences. And it was always pretty much close to the same one. Like, I will learn to listen and obey, or I will be respectful and to my parents, or something like that. Right. So, I mean, in my downtime, I just start writing sentences on my own, so I could just turn in. I'd like whip out like 3,000 or whatever. Like, it was always like on increments of thousands. Like, you got to write 10,000 sentences this weekend. And that's all I would do. Like, whip them out. And then I started to make just like little games out of it. Like, let's see how many lines, like, see how many sentences I can get on one piece of paper. Like, I just set all these little games in my head just to not go insane. And I had deadlines too, so I'd have to do all this stuff through the middle of the night, like late nights and all these other crazy things. I remember some of the room searches my dad would do. He'd just find all these stacks of sentences like pre-written,
Just ready.
Yeah, and it's like, I know you guys are gonna ask me for them, so might as well have them ready.
Jeez. But looking on the positive side, I mean, you are a good daddy, a good husband, a good role model, and it could have been total opposite.
Yeah, I still got a lot of work to do for sure. Not where I want to be, but I think that's good to always be trying to get better. But yeah, I do have to snap back and realize that if I didn't change, my kids would have to go through the same thing. And I kind of wonder that too with my stepmom, of like, what did she have to go through? She had to learn this, right?
Yeah.
So did she get abused? And I remember her saying like her mom would make her go out to the tree and find a switch for her to get hit with, and it wasn't big enough, like, you know, all that. And her mom was mean or something. I don't know. And then I kind of wonder if any of her kids experienced anything like that from her, because she has one kid that's like kind of different than all of them. And I never sat down and talked with her. It'd be interesting to ask her like if she felt like she was ever, or, you know, I'm sure you can either know you're abused or not, but
yeah,
I would be interested to figure it out. But I knew that once I changed this whole thing from being hateful to grateful, that I knew that this podcast was going to come out, and I was going to make a podcast, and I was never going to reveal her name because I don't want to ruin her life.
Right.
She's you know, probably in her 70s, maybe almost 80 now. I don't know. Like, she's almost done anyway. I'm not going to ruin her life, and I'm grateful for what I went through, right? Because I got such a upper hand on a lot of people that haven't done that. Like I said, my chaos level is so much different. I feel like if I'm going to try and go into business like that, it's going to help me. My patience level from other things that I have in my life with my kids and stuff, like, that's going to help me. So like all these things I've gone through are for a reason. For me to be hateful, that's not going to do me any good. The longer you hold on to anything, it just gets worse.
Yeah.
So if I could turn that to being thankful that I went through all that, and then not pass on those traits to my kids, that's the best gift I can give them.
Yeah. What would you say is the best advice you could give somebody who has been through some kind of trauma like this in their childhood, or even, you know, today?
I would say talk to someone and just get it out, because holding it in sucks.
And you've done that for so long.
I've done it for, over a decade.
Yeah.
It sucks, and it's going to creep up on you. You're going to just randomly for me, I was just like randomly working out in the gym sometimes, and it hit me, and I just start like crying, or like right on my way to work, I'm listening to music or whatever, and then these neural pathways just hit you, and you're just like, it's going to make you go crazy.
Yeah.
But you got to get that shit taken care of, because if you don't get it taken care of, you're going to pass it off to your kids.
Right.
And then they're going to pass it off to their kids. And it's not fair to them to have to take care of your issues.
Mm-hmm.
And also turn it from poor me to like, yeah, I conquered that. If I could conquer that, I'm living. I went through that.
Mm-hmm.
It sucked, but I'm better off because of it.
Yeah.
It made me who I am now.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can think that you went through that for a reason, it's going to help you out a lot more. They say that your purpose in life is pretty close to the worst thing that's happened to you in your life.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can figure out what that is, then it's going to be all right. For me, like the child abuse thing, like I want to help out any kids that I can, or I'd started this whole fitness thing now. So I was telling Ashley the other day, like, I'm just going to start setting like 10% of whatever I make just to go straight to like Bikers Against Child Abuse or some kind of different foundation, like do whatever I can, volunteer with whatever I can. Like, I don't know. I just got to help out and obviously not pass it off to my kids. That was the biggest thing too, though.
Yeah.
Like they're the first thing that I got to take care of. So
yeah,
if I don't take care of these issues, they're going to pass them off to their kids, and that's not fair to that generational curse.
mm-hmm.
Someone's got to break that chain in every family.
Right.
Might as well be me.
Which takes a lot of courage to do, to come out and talk to your people, your peeps, and tell them what had happened to you.
Yeah, it's rough. Taking that first step. I remember when I made that Facebook post back in like January. Like I was just trying to start somewhere, so I tried to lay it out a little bit. You're only limited to how many characters you can share. So I put a couple big events in there, but you know, it was interesting to see the feedback from it. A lot of people are like, "Man, I would have had no idea. Like you hide it pretty damn good."
Yeah.
But it's been well received. I'm not looking for sympathy or anything. I just want people to know, like, I went through shit and I got over it because I went through this healing process. And for me, it was like through fitness.
Yeah.
Because I had to get my body right, which got my mind in the right position. And so I figured that's what I'm going to start trying to do for other people, because I know how good it made me feel now and changed my whole direction and outlook on life.
Mm-hmm.
So if I can do that and impact as many people as I can before I die in a positive way, like that's my purpose now.
Yeah. Is there anything else that we didn't touch on?
I think if people can do like a self-reflection, would I trade my body, my mind, and my thoughts right now with like my kids? And if there's anything that you haven't taken care of, like that's something that you should take care of as soon as possible, because time's the most valuable commodity. You got to get that taken care of sooner than later. Because like I know for me with my kids, like I'm not going to get years back in the past where I was probably a shitty dad or whatever, just because I wasn't taking care of my own stuff. So take that first step, open up, tell your story. People aren't going to judge you. They're actually going to be a lot more receptive than you think you will. A lot of times you're just thinking in your own head of the worst possible scenario. You go to the worst spot. You're not going to die. You're not going to have everybody hate you. And if anybody doesn't believe you, or they start treating you differently, now you just know that they weren't supposed to be in your life anyway.
Agreed.
So
agreed.
That's the whole point now of, you know, this whole fitness thing, that I just want to help out anybody that I can. So I think if I share my story, people don't just think I'm some guy that's always been in shape in his life.
That you turned a negative to a positive.
Yeah. I think being vulnerable can maybe connect on some level with someone. And I think it's just selfish of me not to tell my story if it can help one person out there.
Yeah.
Once I came up with that, I didn't come up with that. Somebody told me that. It's really just your ego. If you don't want to tell your story, that's selfish of you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just your ego of you caring what other people are going to think.
Right.
And at the end of the day, in 4 generations, everybody that you know is going to be dead. And no one's going to remember you anyway. So you might as well make an impact while you're still alive.
It's true.
And that's that.
That's a wrap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that's... I'm sure I missed some stuff here and there, but...
It's a pretty powerful story.
I hope it can help someone.
I think you will.
It's been rough getting it out, but just
Yeah.
turn that from poor me to other people can't go through what I went through, and it's going to make an epic story later on.
Yeah, it's going to be a good book.
Yeah, maybe there's a ghostwriter. I'm not writing that
Oh,
book.
come on. You can write it.
Yeah,
Someone else can
yeah.
fix it up.
Yeah, I'll put it through ChatGPT.
You can put anything through ChatGPT. Sure. Well, again, thank you for telling your story.
Yeah,
Such
thanks
a
for
brave
listening.
person. And your journey is definitely not over yet. And continue on the healing process and using your friends and family as a crutch to help you.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate everybody that's helped me out through the way. You've been like a mom for me here in Idaho. I don't have
A mom?
Yeah, I mean, like I hit you up when I need help, and like I don't have really any family here in Idaho, so
Well, you are old enough to be my son, so I
Yeah.
guess,
yeah. I mean, not in a bad way, like for a mom, but like I appreciate how much you guys have cared and helped out over the years, and didn't have to. So
Well, we're here, still here.
yeah, I appreciate everything, and yeah, my family and my wife, everybody's just been huge. Just keep getting better, 1% better every day. That's a goal.
It's a good one. Push the button. Dun, 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 dun.
Oh yeah. I think that's the first time I ever used those buttons on a recording.
Only with me. Only
Yeah.
with me.
Absolutely.
All right.
Well, I appreciate you having all these questions for me, and hopefully I don't have to do this again.
Yeah. Thanks for being in the hot seat.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.